They ran, not toward freedom, but toward space. Away from plantations, away from overseers, away from ledgers and names and numbers. They ran toward islands, because islands promised something the mainland did not, a delay. But empires hate delays. The Caribbean is sold as beauty, blue water, white sand, vacation. But for African people, this region was one of the most militarized landscapes on earth. Every island was watched, every channel was counted, every escape route was studied. Africans understood something quickly. The mainland trapped you in plain sight. An island gave you cover, so they fled. And when they did, everything changed. Across the Caribbean, Africans turned small islands into Maroon bases, spiritual sanctuaries, training grounds, early black nations. These were not accidents, they were strategy. Africans escaping plantations did not flee randomly. They studied geography. They used offshore caves, mangrove islands, inaccessible terrain. British military reports describe these communities with panic as unreachable, unpredictable, dangerous. Translation: they could not be controlled. Long before Haiti shocked the world, Africans used surrounding islands as weapon training zones, spiritual preparation sites, meeting points hidden from plantation surveillance. Colonial correspondence admits it quietly. The Negroes communicate by sea. That sentence terrified them. Once Africans proved islands could not be ignored, empires responded, not with negotiation, with force. Colonial governments began to militarize waterways, criminalize island movement, design islands as punishment zones. Freedom had been found, so it had to be poisoned. One of the earliest laboratories of plantation brutality. Africans caught fleeing to nearby islands were publicly executed, branded, exiled permanently. Islands nearby were labeled lawless, which meant black people lived there. British records reveal something chilling. Runaways were sometimes left on islands deliberately. No supplies, no boats. A slow death meant to send a message. Here's the part that rarely survives in textbooks. Some Caribbean islands were never reclaimed. Africans stayed, built lives, buried their dead, and then maps changed. Islands marked as uninhabited, abandoned, unimportant. But oral history tells another story. Fishing routes remembered names, burial grounds remembered bodies, songs remembered warnings. These islands were erased on paper, not in memory. By the late 1700s, Caribbean islands were no longer just land, they were warnings. Colonial officials feared one thing above all else: African coordination across water. So they built coastal watch systems, naval patrol routes, informant networks. Freedom became loud, and loud things get hunted. African movement by sea was criminalized, not because it was illegal, but because it worked. This is the tragedy at the heart of the Caribbean islands. Africans did everything right. They studied terrain, they built community, they preserved culture, they resisted, and still the empire adapted. Islands that once meant refuge became places of exile, punishment, slow disappearance. Freedom was no longer denied outright. It was delayed until it broke people. If you listen carefully, the Caribbean still tells this story. Not in museums, not in resorts, but in place names, burial sites, drum rhythms, family memory. These islands were never silent. They were watched into silence. And now, They are speaking again.